All right. Hello, fellow book lovers. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, which is make a booktube video. I've been watching booktube for like 5 years now, and I always really wanted to do it. I just never did it. So I figured what better way to do it than start off with a video about my favorite author ever, Mr. Stephen King. And I wanted to, make it a little simple, a little easy today. Forget my feet wet. Just making a top 10 list. Favorite Stephen King books. So let's jump into it. I do want to say that I haven't read every Stephen King book yet, so I do expect this list to change over time. I've read around 25 of his novels, and he's written like 60. So I'm a little bit less than halfway through. So I do expect some of these books to change eventually, and maybe in a year or two we'll make another version of this video. So I do have an honorable mention because I was, going back and forth with number 10 in this book, and ultimately I just went with the one that I enjoyed a little bit more. So let's talk about honorable mention. So, The Dead Zone, and this may surprise some Stephen King readers because I know a lot of people, tend to have this high up in their favorites, but I think I just went into it thinking it was going to be something else than it was. There's a section in the book where it goes to Castle Rock and it has to do, with a murder mystery, and I was really engaged at that part, and it just kind of went somewhere else. And I felt like there was like three different plot chunks of the book, and they didn't feel all that cohesive to me. I think this will definitely benefit from a reread. And, it's a short book for Stephen King, so I'll definitely reread this one. But I just didn't quite enjoy it as much as I thought I would. So that is the honorable mention. So let's get started with the actual list here. So number 10, like I said, I went back and forth between this and the Dead Zone. I ended up liking this one more. Firestarter. I was going to say by Stephen King, obviously by Stephen King. I did not think I was going to like this book. My dad, this is one of the few books my dad has read from Stephen King, and he always suggested it to me. And I thought maybe just because it was one of the few books that he's read, and he knows I like Stephen King, and his dad read it too. So my grandpa. So I finally read it, and I was kind of like going into it, dragging my feet a little bit, because I wasn't, the premise seemed interesting, but it wasn't really what I was looking for at that time. And it was really, really good, pleasant surprise. I think the antagonist, Rainbird, really good, really creepy. Um, Characters, it's not King's strongest showing for characters. They aren't that memorable, but it worked. It worked for the plot, and I think obviously this is a huge inspiration for Stranger Things, and I love that show, and it's kind of cool to see where some of that influence came from. So, really good book. Number 10. All right, so it's already going to start getting weird, in the sense of I'm sure a lot of people are going to disagree with this, and that's okay. It's just my list as of right now. Number 9, The Shining. So this is a book that so many people rank amongst their favorite King books, and I guess technically it still is. This is my top 10, but it's just not anywhere close to the top 4 for me. And the premise is great. I don't understand why I don't like it as much as I should. I think, isolated, haunted hotel, ghosts. I mean, great character work. It just feels like it should be a no-brain home run for me. It wasn't. And this is another book that I will reread, and it may benefit from that. But when I read it, I was a little bit underwhelmed. I think because of the expectations I put on it. This is one of his most iconic works. And for me, it was good. I think the character work was great. It just wasn't that creepy, in my opinion. And I just wasn't completely engaged for the whole book. But I definitely want to reread this one. All right. Number 8. This is a book that I recently read for the first time. And obviously, really good. Made it in my top 10. And that book is Needful Things. And, this is a big book, and this is why I think I put it off for a while. I mean, all Stephen King books are pretty big, but, this is definitely a chunky one. And I think Leland Gaunt, the antagonist in this book, is so good, so memorable. This whole premise of this book reminded me of something out of the Twilight Zone. And I think that's why I love Stephen King so much, is that a lot of his premises remind me of something out of the Twilight Zone. I love that show. But obviously, it's more than a 30-minute episode here. It's just so good. The character work, the small town, the amount of characters he writes in this book, and they're still so, distinct, is really impressive. I love how everything ends up intertwining with one another, and it's a really solid book. I think if anything I could say is why this isn't higher, I think it is a little too long. I don't have a problem with length of the book. Sometimes I actually think if it's too short, it's not even worth the read because I'm not going to get fully invested. I just think it was a little too long. And, when I think about a great book, it's, do I want to reread it? I don't know if I want to reread this one. At least maybe it's because it's fresh, but it's so long. But it really was an enjoyable read for sure. So that was number 7. Number 8? I think it was number 8. Yes, number 8. All right, number 7, we have Pet Sematary. So another book that I think a lot of people will disagree with my ranking on. Growing up, I didn't read Stephen King. I really didn't read that much, actually, growing up. But this was the book I always associated with Stephen King. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the movie. I never watched the movie either, but I've heard of it. And for me, again, I went into it with such high expectations. And this book is a slow burn. It really is. So it's not just full of scares. It is a scary novel with the themes that it touches upon. But it's not, like Scary Monster kind of scary. So it was a slow burn, but I think the atmosphere was really captivating. And I really enjoyed the characters. I think, I've been saying this about most of the books. I would like to reread this one. I think out of all of them, this will be the one I touch on first because I really wanted to love it. And it didn't hit the way I wanted it to. So definitely will reread this. It's kind of like the trend here, if they're not top 5, I feel like I need to reread them, especially when they're so iconic, like Pet Sematary and The Shining and things like that. All right, so now it starts getting interesting. Number 6, Misery. This is another book I recently read, and it was so good. There's a reason why this is regarded as one of Stephen King's best works. It's not all that long. And, Annie Wilkes, I don't need to tell you, she's a, horrifying antagonist in the realist way. She's not the boogeyman, but she's scary. And, the isolation and just the impending doom you feel in this book, it's great. I think, the movie's great too, but this book, there's so many things in this book that aren't in the movie that are so well done, and I think that's worth the read. So if you've watched the movie and you haven't read this, I highly recommend reading it. I mean, it's so much better. I'm not going to say the movie's not good, but this is great. Movie's good. This is great. Number 6. Okay, number 5. Now we get into these books are all 5 stars. I know it sounds weird to have a top 10 list and those books are like 4 stars. But like I said, I still have a lot of King to read, so I'm hoping eventually my top 10 will be all 5-star books. But the next 5, all 5 stars. Huge impact on me as a reader and as a fan of Stephen King. So let's get into it. Number 5, Carrie. So this is the first published book by Stephen King, and this wasn't my first read from him. And I went into it not all that excited about it. Again, kind of like Firestarter. For one, part of it being that it's so short. I thought if it was this short, it can't be that good. It can't get me invested emotionally. I was wrong. Definitely wrong about that. This just does everything that Stephen King, in my opinion, does so great. It's on display here. Characters are amazing. I love the different narratives in this book, with like the newspaper clippings, and it is such a good book. I can't get too deep into it. I think the plan is to kind of review every Stephen King book in publication order. And this will be the first one I do, obviously. So good. And it's so short. I think if I were to recommend anyone who has never read any Stephen King, this would be the book I recommend. It just happens to be his first published book. It's short, it's sweet, does everything King does on a great level. I think there's a reason why, early Stephen King is, a lot of people consider it his best era as a writer, me included. Okay, number 4, and this is where it gets really good. And these are books I'm just so passionate about. And ironically, I actually don't have the copy of this book with me. I remember lending it to my dad. I don't know what happened to it. So, number 4 is Salem's Lot. What an amazing book Salem's Lot is. In my opinion, it is Stephen King's scariest novel. I think there are so many scenes in this book that are constantly in my mind. The atmosphere, the town, the characters, some of my favorite characters in the multiverse are in this novel. And the antagonist, there's just so many, and there's twists and turns you don't really expect to happen. At least I didn't. And it's kind of a mid-sized book. It's not one of his big books, so it's not also like a Carrie short book, but it's so good. And that's a book I think about. I'm like, yeah, let's read it now. Let's read it again. It's that good. Salem's Lot, I say, like, that's one of my favorite books ever. It's just so good. It's so scary, and you need to read it if you haven't. Okay, number 3. So number 3 and number 2, I wanted to say it was a tie, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be that guy. So today, this is number 3. Tomorrow, it might be number 2. And this is The Stand. Such an epic book, with its contents and its size. This book just, again, changed me as a reader and what I want to look for in future books that I read. Post-apocalyptic, superflu, wipes out 99.7% of the population, something like that. And at first I was like, that kind of sounds not that interesting. I mean, I was reading this, in the middle of COVID, and obviously there was, parallels there. I was like, all right, it doesn't sound that good. That's just the backdrop. This is very much a book about the journey, and the journey is so good. It's so epic. Characters are amazing, legendary antagonist. Um, and this is a book that's big, right? So I'm not just a fan of, I don't think length always affects how you receive a book. I think sometimes, if it's big, it helps it makes it better. Sometimes it makes it worse. This book, I never wanted it to end. I wish it was longer. I think this is his longest book he's ever written. I wish it was longer. So good. And I'm absolutely will be rereading this one day. So, The Stand, number 3. All right. Number 2. It. This was my first Stephen King book I read, and this not up to number 2 for the nostalgia factor. It's just so good, and I mean, I think, this feels like, okay, everyone has this at their top, and we're finally on the same page here. Um, but I think for people that aren't readers, and they know the movies, they'd be like, why would you read the book? I mean, this thing's huge. It's not even comparable. The movies don't do this book justice. I know a lot of people think that the newer Stephen King adaptations were, really good. I didn't. I don't know where people think that was good. I think, yeah, it was scary, but they made it scary in a way that wasn't scary in the book. Um, and I just think that they none of the story was there. So this is epic, and it's very similar to The Stand in its length and just how epic it feels as a novel. But the reason why I put this at number 2 over The Stand is because it has everything that, nice large cast of characters. It's coming of age, but it's also got the creeps in there. Um, I mentioned Salem's Lot being the scariest. This is right up there, I think. Um, it's just such a good book. I remember reading this huge book in 5 days, and that's how much I enjoyed it. And again, the second I finished it, I was like, I want to read it again. That's how you know a book's good. Number 2. All right. I wonder if anyone's going to predict what number 1 is. Because I'm kind of cheating here. So you may be a little confused, but I'll explain. Number 1, Stephen King, is not book 7, The Dark Tower, but the Dark Tower series as a whole. This series, and I don't want to sound, hyperbolic, the series changed my life. It made me love reading. It just was a story that I've never ever imagined I would be lucky enough to be able to, consume. It's the best story, like I said, I've ever taken in. We're talking about movies, shows, books. This series is that for me. And I think it is for a lot of people. It is so good. I guess, it's a cheat. It's not a novel. It's a group of novels, but it has this overarching story. Once again, this journey you're taking to the tower. And it is just what's so special about it is the characters, the atmosphere, the journey, the antagonist, the originality of, the content of the books. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Um, I remember after reading book 2 of The Dark Tower, realizing that, okay, great authors, they can tell a story that's been told before. And what makes them great is the way they do it, the way they write it. Stephen King, after reading the Drawing of the Three, he's a great writer because he can write great, but he also create stories you would never, ever think of on your own. He's so original, and The Dark Tower is exactly that. Really extremely original. So if you haven't read it, you need to read it. So those are the top 10 books from Stephen King, in my opinion. Like I said, I think in a year or two, I'm going to touch on this again and it'll probably be different. But those top 3, top 4, they're forever going to be in the top 10. I can't anticipate that changing. So I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you soon.